compact, keep it pretty high level. It was ratified by Congress between Colorado and Nebraska in 1923. What's important to remember when you're hearing about the South Platte Compact, and it's been in the news quite a bit here in the last couple of years on some of the things Nebraska's trying to do, but it only impacts the lower portion of the South Platte River in Colorado. So basically, this area here with the red line is where it impacts. So downstream of Fort Morgan, between Fort Morgan and Sterling, is the upper bounds of what the compact impacts to the state line by Julesburg. So the compact requires, it has, I call them seasons, 2 seasons. Kind of the summer irrigation season, April 1 to October 15th. It requires that Colorado maintain a flow at the state line of 120 cubic feet per second. If we don't have 120 cubic feet per second at the state line, we have to curtail all water users in Colorado in that area, just the lower section, that are junior to June 14th, 1897. So if there's a water right that has a 1902 water priority down there, and we don't have 120 CFS, we curtail them, which means when we say curtail, that means they can't divert water from the stream. They're out of priority. There's not enough water available. So really important to note, it doesn't impact any water rights above the westerly Washington County line. That's the upper boundary of the compact. And then there's the winter season, as I like to call it, October 16th to March 31st. The compact has several articles that deal with that. They've never been exercised. There's been a lot in the news recently that Nebraska is looking to exercise that. And what it has in the winter months is it gives Nebraska the right to construct Perkins County Canal, which is in the lower portion of the section. You can see the big blue star, hopefully. That's where that canal was located. It was being constructed at the time the compact was being negotiated, and that's why it reserved that right. It basically gave it a priority date of December 17th, 1921. So what that means, if Nebraska constructs the Perkins County Canal, in accordance with the compact, they have the right to call for water during the winter up to 500 CFS with that priority date. So we would curtail anybody above them to the Washington County line that's junior to that. It did reserve the first 35,000 acre feet outside of that to Colorado for their use for storage and subsequent irrigation use. And we do have water rights down there that are senior. Julesburg or Jumbo Reservoir, depending on where you're from, is senior to that. So it can continue to divert even if that is constructed and is calling for water. And then another big component that impacts all of the South Platte is there's a 3 states agreement for endangered species between Nebraska, Wyoming, and Colorado that really comes into play down there in the operation of the river. And again, I'm not going to go into detail, a lot of information here, but the Literate River Supreme Court again allocates water between Colorado water users, basically the tunnel and the Meadowland users, and also allocates water between Colorado and Wyoming. Sort of puts the compact and the use of water between the 2 on priorities. And similar with the Sand Creek Agreement, it's quite a bit different. It requires Colorado when Nebraska starts irrigating, they have a demand for 40 CFS or more, they notify us. And we deliver 40 CFS to the state line for 7 days, and then we can reduce that to 35 CFS. Again, this was an agreement to try to preserve what happened historically and avoid, in that instance, litigation and kind of a federal conflict. This slide we call our snake diagram. It's like a lot of snakes on there, but you can see all the blue lines and the magnet thickness of those represents the quantity of water. So the larger the line is, the more water. So it tries to show the water that's native to each stream system. You can see the 7 divisions are numbered there. You can see the South Platte and the northeast corner there. It shows how much comes out of each major tributary, native water, and how much leaves the state line. And you can see, on average, 383,000 acre feet a year leave the state through the South Platte versus the Colorado River, which is 4.4, almost 4.5 million acre feet. little bit. Characteristics, again, this plays into water administration and water rights, but snowpack is the top chart there. You can see average is the smooth line that's the median, not the average. In the middle of that, you can see 2024 snowpack, how that compares to the historic average. Then you can see the historic minimum. So you take a minimum from every year, compile it, that's what it looks like. Looks really close to 2002, 2003, and some other years, unfortunately. And then the maximum, if you took all the maximums every year and compile those, that's the maximum line. The basin, it's a big one, 23,000 square miles. The river from headwaters to the state line is about 400 miles long. And the precipitation, averages year to year, 10 to 17 inches per year. You can see a kind of a scatter graph there of each year's annual average precipitation. And huge elevation change, right? We go from the Rocky Mountains, from the Divide to Nebraska, Kansas. So, 14,000 feet plus to 3,400. So the basin is very complicated. It's connected here in the South Platte to all the tributaries. We've got high mountain, water rights and operations. We got foothills. We have plains. We could have great snowpack up high. We could have drought out east. So it's just a real variable, complicated, and more importantly, the water commissioners, the people that actually make all this work, we always deal engineers in averages, right? And they remind me real quick, when you look at this or the snowpack, there's no such thing as average, right? There's right now, and it's very rarely is it close to average. You're usually way under, way over, and you're having to address that, and so are the water users. This is a map on our website of Trans Mountain diversion. So what a Trans Mountain diversion is, this indicates water that if we didn't intercept it by constructing a ditch or something else, it would flow, for example, into the Colorado River Basin, where we've constructed a ditch and a tunnel that intercepts that runoff and brings it and dumps it into the South Platte or another basin. That's why we call it Trans Mountain or Trans Basin here sometime, where we take it from one basin to another. You can see each one of those lines is a specific Trans Mountain diversion or a ditch, and you can see 14 of them there listed, bringing water from other basins, primarily the Colorado River, into the South Platte River Basin. Hydrology, on average, the USGS estimates native flow in the South Platte annually about 1.4 million acre feet. Trans Mountain water imports, water we add on top of that and bring into our basin annually is about 400,000 acre feet or 1.8 million. And our total diversions that we monitor over 4 million acre feet. So you look at that and go, well, 1.8 million, if you have 1.8 million, how do you divert 4 million? Doesn't make sense. Well, return flows. That's what makes the river, especially the lower portion of the river. And we'll get into that in more detail, but as you know, as you divert water from the stream and you apply it to growing crops, a portion of that water is consumed by the crop and it's gone. A portion of it runs off back to the stream, and a portion goes into the groundwater system and makes its way back to the stream. Call those return flows. Or it's diverted off and comes to your sink in your house. And you use it, flush your toilet, goes away, wastewater treatment plant goes back to the river. It goes, you water your lawn, and it soaks back in. This is a point flow diagram going down the river, so you can see the flow in the river in cubic feet per second on the y-axis there. So you can see as it hits every ditch, you almost dry the river, right? On several of these where it dips down. And then the river gains. Those are gains from those return flows coming back to the stream over time. Very important. Like I said, return flows make up the river, especially the lower portion. We talk about priorities of water rights. It's important to know how they developed. Again, you can see this if you can. Hopefully you can see colors, but the upper mountainous areas developed first. Those water rights were first in time, first in right. Started developing, being appropriated in the 1860s with the gold mining rush. The miners were up there using their water to mine with, and you can imagine that's what created the prior appropriation system in Colorado. Imagine you have this great mine. And you're using the water, you're diverting the creek to mine everything, and you come out one day and you have no water in the creek. That's bad, right? You can imagine the fights were very bad, very serious, but somebody could go above you and start diverting the water you've been diverting for a year, 2 years, 5 years. So there were a lot of fights that ensued. So they came up with a priority system to try to put a system in place that dealt with that and recognized first in time, first in right. And the ones that made really good money consistently were the farmers and ranchers that fed the miners. So in those upper areas, they were starting to divert that water off the stream as well to grow crops, to feed, feed water, livestock, and other things. So what they did is they retimed the system, and then you can see below that, kind of in the upper portion of the South Platte River, water rights started to develop in the 1860s because they retimed it, slowed it down when it was normally dry after runoff. Well, now there was water there coming back at a different time, more consistent, was more dependable. So people started then building farms and diverting water there. And as they did that, spread it out, then you can see between Greeley downstream, that started developing in the 1880s, and then the lower end in the late 1880s. The South Platte River, as far as water rights, is over appropriated. You'll hear that term a lot. What that means is there's a lot more demand or need for the water than there is physical water in the system. That's over appropriated. Typically on the South Platte River Basin are calls in the summer. So that means water rights that the demand versus the supply. We're looking at 1860s to 1890s. So anybody that has a water right junior to 1860 or 1890 is curtailed, and they can't divert to make those seniors satisfied. So that really hits home. That's pretty old water rights, and everyone else is curtailed. I think you talked some about climate augmentations earlier, but those are important. Those came in with the 1969 Act, and they allow people to divert water out of priority as long as they're replacing that water back to the stream. And the idea and the concept is those water users downstream of them don't see any difference to the stream. They're getting their water, they're taking water out of priority, putting water back in above those downstream water users. Very important in a lot of those in our division. I mentioned a call, so that's during demand. If a water right isn't satisfied, they'll place a call for their water rights to be delivered. And if it's a valid call, they have the demand, it's a legal use, it's in accordance with their decree, we'll place their call. We call that a valid call, and that means we curtail all water users upstream of them that are junior to that call. So you could have, like today, we have a call out by Sterling. I remember the date, sorry, thank you. I was going to say 1923. 1920s. Let's get 1920s. So anybody upstream of them, whether you're in Golden on Clear Creek, anything that's tributary to that upstream is curtailed. So if they're junior to a 1922 or 23 water right, they can't divert today. All this information, again, that's a big part. We've made everything available through the web. We have a lot of great tools through the Colorado Decision Support System. You can see stream gauges, diversions for major ditches, reservoir levels, water rights, groundwater rights, everything. You can go to this website and find clicks all our calls. You can also see those. You can also do an analysis and look at the historic calls if you're interested.
Just ask, in the case of like a Sterling call, for example, how expected are, like if you're a junior to that call, pretty much just based on like historic use or how the system is right now based on climate, and do you know that that's going to happen, or is it all been a surprise and you're like, oh, now I can't water my crops?
I hate to use the term old timers, but those that depend on it, irrigation municipalities and things, I mean, that's part of their process. So they have a good feel seasonally. We don't have a crystal ball. We're trying to project out too and react as it comes. New people that, say buy a farm or want a farm, they're often, they bought a water right. They planted a crop. They expect the water, and then they get curtailed out of the gate early in the season. They're like, hey, I need water. So it's both. So we try to educate a lot, but most of the ditch companies and municipalities, the water users, they kind of understand, depending on the weather and the precipitation. But it gets complicated. Like I said, the system can be so different out east versus here. If you're not watching the big picture, it can catch you by surprise, you know, if you're, and the same for reservoir fill season, you know, that typically starts November 1st. We're getting ready to start that, and that's when all the irrigation demands typically stop. We switch to reservoir fills, and it's challenging too, because you might have a call, might be really dry out east, and then you might be under ice and snow up high, so you don't, it also might be, when do I have the opportunity physically to do it? Because if your ditch is frozen, or you can't get up to a reservoir, you just can't activate it. But we have a call list, so you can subscribe, so you get emails every time we change a call, you get notified. We have the water commissioners, most of them have their own call list, they'll also email that people can subscribe to. And we make those daily calls, and sometimes we'll even say, hey, we're anticipating in the next 5 days, the compact call might come on. So we're trying to give people notice, but yeah, I think most water users have been doing it for a while. They know if their ditch is really junior, really senior, how that works. Yeah.
So how many levels are there? Does every water right have a space in the hierarchy, or bands and different water? Like the seniors to juniors, it's like every single water right has a spot in the line, or in there?
Yeah, some of them have similar, like they might have filed and appropriated the same date. And a lot of, like a ditch, you know, might serve a big area. They might have had a really senior water right they got for enough water at the time to maybe irrigate their crop. And then they might have gotten a later one, 10 years later and 20 years later and 50 years later with different quantities. So every ditch has multiple water rights with different dates. And there are bands, you know, there were certain triggers. People were competing for water rights. So even back in the 1800s, early 1900s, when a couple ditch companies would go to file for the water rights, and other ditch companies would go, oh boy, we better go file for ours. So they would try to get in line together. So some of them are very close. But yeah, there's
when you filed and when.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it's a long list. And there's bands though. I mean, there's your general categories. If something changed in the basin, like the development of groundwater, or when they started actually using reservoirs to supplement, those are kind of time periods. So you'll start seeing, well, here were all the surface water direct flows are really old, and then here the reservoirs started coming in, then more direct flow. Oh, and now we have groundwater wells and springs started coming in. So they're sort of in bands, but they'll have their own unique date. And that's what we compare. If they filed in water court the same year, say this year, 2024, if we have a 2024 call on, then we look to the date that they appropriated it. So they actually put it to use. So if someone appropriated it 2 days before the other one, and like that's our cutoff, then even though it's the same year on the water right, the one gets their water, the other doesn't. And sometimes we do get to that. We call it our administrative number that kind of gives that information when we send out our call, and it's a mix of the appropriation and adjudication date.
How often those calls come and go? I mean, is it, you put a call on where you can't use it, and then is that for the season, or is it like a week later it can come back on and you're back to using water?
Yeah, that's a great question. We try not to chase it. We try to stay steady to limit the number of call changes, and we typically only do an 8 a.m. call. Sometimes because of the river conditions, like right now, we'll stay on the same call, maybe for months. But in the summer, the call might change daily, and we try to do 8 a.m., but we really try to limit 8 a.m., noon, and 4. So in a given day, there might be 7 different call changes. And I mentioned the South Platte. You know, the South Platte might have call changes, and you saw the development of water rights, so there might be a call down there. Each one of those tributaries might also have a call on that's senior to that's calling water users above them out, but they're all still senior to the one way down lower. So sometimes we'll have 20, 30 calls on the stream system between all those tribs in the South Platte that are having to pay attention. Okay, where's the call? But yeah, in the summer when things are dropping or coming up, we call that the shoulder. It's not uncommon to have a call change daily.
What drives those? Is it just like rainfall now?
It's both. It's the amount of water in the stream. It's demand. So a lot of times it's precip. We'll go more junior with the calls and work with the water users so they can pick that water up as it's coming through the system without injury. we'll coordinate that. And then, as, you know, a ditch, a lot of people, a lot of crops under it might be hay, so they might be haying. So all of a sudden their demand drops by half for a week or two. So that frees up more water, and it might cause the call to go more junior when more people can pick up that water because that senior's not taking their full ditch. But then after they're done haying, they want all their water again. So it, you know, especially in the summer, it's not uncommon to have daily call changes and multiple on the trids and the main stem. Great question. In winter, it tends to be less, but we also have senior reservoir fills, and then we have junior recharge rights as well. So depending on demand and what's going on, we could still see call changes bounce around. We try to maximize the beneficial use, so we want to go as junior as we possibly can, so everybody can get water without injury to seniors. Augmentation plans. You can see the number of plans filed. We have 1,000 plans in 2002, a lot of new plans. So when the court system changed and we were required to have plans of augmentation for any large capacity wells to operate to determine the timing and amount and location of their depletions. But you can see we had 1,000 by 2007, we had 1,300 on the books. In 2019, we had 1,900. We're averaging about 50 plans of augmentation or changes to plans or additions to plans per year in the South Platte River Basin. And some of them, you know, they used to be pretty simple, but as things are getting tighter and more complex, I mean, many of these plans of augmentations might be 200 pages, the court decree, accounting requirements and everything else. It used to be a piece of paper someone would hand you, and now it's these complex programs and spreadsheets.
Good question.
Uh-huh.
Effective are the augmentation plans? Like, are they playing out as planned, or are there some issues with implementation?
That's a great question. So you're taking a system, and as I mentioned earlier, there's averages, right? We deal in averages, and then there's what's happening today, because that's the reality. That's what the farmers and everyone's dealing with. The augmentations generally deal on average, so they're trying to mimic what happened historically on average. But I'd say generally they are playing out. They're making replacements in time, place, and amount. They have limits to try to mimic what happened historically. And I don't know how detailed you got an aug plan, but the two important parts of an augmentation plan. So if you have a water right, and you want to change it, or you want to divert water out of priority, an augmentation allows an out of priority diversion. So it figures out what your depletion to the system is. And that's the water you can take from the system and do something else with it. And it also figures out what your return flows are on a change of water right, and if you're augmenting that. So that's that water that came back to the stream system. So change of water right, it's very important. It's you quantify the historic consumptive use. So what was lost from the system, that's what you have to move or to change to a different use. But you always forever have to maintain those historic return flows that came back to the stream. So nobody below you sees that. And then the augmentation plans, again, they're really dynamic here because generally they replace not to the historic location or to the point of dry up, but above the flowing water right that's shorted. So you can imagine you might be taking water out of priority in Golden, but the calling and controlling water right on the river might be at Sterling. So instead of putting water back in right below Golden, you might be putting it in right above Sterling. But so they're really dynamic, they're complicated, but yeah, I mean, it's a real stringent system. They're decreed by the courts, but again, you can't ever mimic what happened every day historically. It's an average.
We started talking earlier today about augmentation plans for wells.
Mm-hmm.
In well work, we deal more with augmentation plans, so that emissions by economics. The decision maker does being the same type of plans, or is there two different types of augmentation? Obviously, they're for two different purposes, but it's the state of the.
Yeah, so technically gravel pits exposure to groundwater, right? It is a well. But they have a different legal mechanism and framework. You know, there's different statutes that deal with them, different, I guess, allowances but generally, yeah, we look at it all as replacing those depletions to the stream. So I'll just cover it real quick. Sorry.
Can I ask one?
Yeah.
With this huge increase in augmentation plans, number and complexity, how has that impacted your office and just staffing capacity? Because it seems like a lot more to deal, like a lot more to deal with.
It is a lot. We don't have slides in here. It's some slides we presented at Water Congress and the 4 states council and other things. But yeah, not only are we getting 50 a year, they're so much more complex every year than they were. So it's instead of 50 simple one-page things, it's 50. Yeah, I mean, we get spreadsheets in accounting that come in to track the use and measurement of that water and replacement. That, a spreadsheet might have 20 tabs in it. And the tabs might be thousands of rows and thousands of columns. I mean, and some of them even require programs to get the data to spit into the spreadsheet. So we've slowly been able to ramp up a little bit on our water accounting and operations group to help support the water commissioners. Because again, boots on the ground, seeing this stuff, stuff's great in spreadsheets, it's great on the computer, but until you go out to it, you gotta make sure it makes sense, and that's how it's really working. But yeah, it's really skyrocketed. We have some really good slides not in here that show that increase in workload, but we're, it's been recognized, and we've gotten, I think we got 2 new accounting positions over the last 10 years, and we just recently got 2 river coordinator positions that are somewhat similar. We have less water commissioners today than we had 20 years ago. So it's a real challenge. We've taken advantage. I think I showed the telemetry in the sites. Only 10 minutes left. Okay. Sorry. We'll breeze through this real quick. Again, a lot of new things, in-stream flows. So take that complex, and I'll get to your question afterwards. I'm sorry. But yeah, augmentation plans, they have to go through court. You have a lot of objectors, and especially people that have water rights, defending their water rights to make sure they're not injured. So generally, I'd say they work really well, and they're a phenomenal, very important tool here. So take all that complexity, and I just touched on it, and now throw new things into it, right? You've got a system that historically dried up the river in 50 locations, and now it's very important, very needed. You're protecting flows in the stream, getting it past all those drives. We've got in-stream flows, we got recreational and channel diversions, we got some new legislation a few years ago, plans of augmentation that augment stream flows so they keep and protect flows in the stream, and also for reservoir release and mitigation. Timing. Let's see how much time we have at the end. I can go into groundwater wells and depletions and augmentation.
Let me just do a real quick introduction to David. So David is the Deputy Water Commissioner of the Poudre Basin. And I'm trying to skip through the most important stuff. He served as operation manager for the North Poudre Irrigation Company. Then he was optimizing irrigation through the Western United States as a solution engineer for Rubicon Systems. He toured and proposed water efficiency solutions to irrigation districts west of the Mississippi for the next 5 years until 2019. And I assume since then you've been serving as the Deputy River Commissioner.
That's correct.
So thank you for being with us today.
No problem. Hi, everybody. My name's David. David Bridge. Let's go over the Poudre today. Fun facts about the Poudre. It's 127 miles long from the confluence of the South Platte to the headwaters there at Poudre Lake, which you can reach off of Trail Ridge Road, Rocky Mountain National Park. Another fact I like to talk about with the Poudre is, well, in my opinion, I think the Poudre is the most important river that came into play in developing the doctrine of water appropriation. It was the problem at the confluence of the South Platte and the Poudre River that spurred on the development of that legislation, which is worldwide precedent now. I finally like to call it the North-South Platte, because one of the largest contributors to South Platte Basin. So today we're going to go over water resources, water uses, and water administration in the Poudre. So there's basically 3 different types of sources of water in the Poudre. We have our native river water, which is rainfall and snowfall, and then we have trans mountain systems such as the Colorado Big Thompson Project and other trans mountain supplies, which, so if you ever go to any pass, like say for instance, if you go to Literate Pass, the pass between the Colorado River and the Poudre River, you stand on the pass and you can look this way and you can see the Colorado River. You turn around this way and this is the Poudre River, right? Well, almost every pass along the Continental Divide early in the history of water law, it's for water use in Colorado, they've done two ditches, one on this side of the pass and one on this side of the pass, and then it takes it to the eastern slope. I don't think there is even one trans mountain diversion that goes from the east slope to the east.
One that brings water from the west here, but then you take it to the region too.
Right, so, yeah. So, just to talk a little bit more about, that percentage, right? So here we have our Poudre River flows, it's roughly 275,000 acre feet per year of water that passes the gauge of the canyon mouth, which I also like to talk about the gauge of the canyon mouth. It's the second oldest running gauge in the United States, right? Only second behind the East Ferry. It was set in place in 1881 by the first state engineer, right? And the reason for that was because of the fight that was going on between the agricultural colony in Fort Collins and I think its name was the Greeley colony, but I can't remember the exact name. The Union colony, right? Yeah. And those two entities were in conflict over water use in the Poudre River, and so the state engineer, who was a newly formed as state engineer, probably because of this problem, set the gauge of the canyon mouth so it would be transparent to both water users about how much water was being made by the Poudre River. And then you can see, here's our Colorado Big Thompson imports, and then the other Trans Mountain imports, which, fun fact about the Colorado Big Thompson is, their largest partner in Horsetooth Reservoir is North Poudre Irrigation. And that project probably wouldn't have moved forward if it wasn't for the fact that North Poudre needed to buy into that project. Because North Poudre is actually a really interesting irrigation system. You have irrigation systems that are sort of on channel, right? And then you have irrigation systems that are way out away from the river somewhere. And that's what North Poudre irrigation is. And the nickname for North Poudre irrigation before the Colorado Big Thompson project was North Puddle irrigation. Because they get to work with 40,000 acre feet per year out of Horsetooth and trades and exchange. Okay, so this is another slide that talks about what we just looked at. 65% of the water in the river comes from snow, melt, and rainfall. The headwaters take off at Poudre Lake there, which is actually the top of the Big South tributary to the Poudre, which is another fact that I like to talk about with rivers is typically the river will keep its name through the fork that's the largest contributor, right? And here we have at the Poudre, the confluence of Joe Wright Creek and the Big South is technically the beginning of the Poudre River. So they call it the Big South because it was a tributary coming from the south into the Poudre, and then it's related to what they call the South Fork of the Poudre, which they used to call the Little South. So the Big South and the Little South. And then, okay, yeah, the next slide will talk about this last bullet point, the average flow rates are highly variable from year to year. So you can see right here, this is a graph of the canyon mouth gauge. And we have our average here in green. And then these are the total amounts in acre feet that pass by that structure, which is actually not a structure, it's just a straight portion of the river. And so you can see here in the 80s,
We made a bunch of, we had a bunch of snow and a bunch of rain. And then here in 2002, which was when I was the irrigation manager at the vegetable farm in Wellington, we had one of the lowest years on record. Okay. So another slide demonstrating the variable rate of the Poudre River as far as flows are concerned. And one of the important things to remember about the Poudre River is when we have water flowing in the river in the wintertime, that typically wouldn't be normal if it wasn't for all the water that we have in storage above. Like, say for instance, in Chambers Lake right now, we have a well, it's called the joint operations procedure, and what happens is an entity of water users in the upper, storage in the upper part of the basin release a small amount of water to keep the river alive during the winter. Which, if it wasn't for that, there would be dry stretches for sure. Oh, and this is, oh, do we need to quit every soon? So here's another slide that demonstrates that most of the water that we get in the Poudre comes between here at the beginning of May and then there at the beginning of July. And then one of the most amazing things about the Poudre River that I think happens is that the peak runoff here is always within 5 days of June 9th. Every time, no matter what. Okay, yeah, so this is just another slide that demonstrates when we get those big surges of water from snow melt, which I also measure the snow too, so I get to watch the depth increase and the water content increase throughout the winter. This is just a slide that demonstrates the variability of the water that comes down from the Poudre. And once folks realized that they weren't going to get it done with just digging the Trans Mountain ditches, they started to realize that they're going to have to build reservoirs. So after that point, it seems like they ended up sticking a reservoir in every drop in the entire basin. We have probably more reservoirs in the Poudre River than any other tributary. I mean, I do a report on 65 reservoirs every month. Here's a slide that demonstrates the difference between what happens in dry years and average years and then wet years. Like we were just talking about this year in 2002, I can remember the guy I was learning from Lou Grant. He was a professor emeritus, atmospheric science professor at CSU. And he used to tell me, like, well, if you can figure out the weather, you can figure out farming. And that year in 2002, he was pretty amazed because we had 4 90-degree days in March. And then here's a slide that demonstrates the Trans Mountain system, what we call the Colorado Big Thompson Project. Oh, another fun fact about that I like to talk about with Horsetooth is there's not a drop of Poudre water in the Horsetooth reservoir, right? Everybody's aware of that, right? So all of the water that comes and goes into Horsetooth, there's a bit of mixing that happens when it goes down into the Big Thompson, why they call it the Colorado River Big Thompson project. There's a bit of mixing that happens there, but the water in Horsetooth Reservoir is straight out from the other side on the continental or on the Colorado River Basin, which used to be called the Grand River Basin.
We've got like
2 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. We went over this, right? Yes. We love Horsetooth, it's a great reservoir. Okay, right, here's just another slide demonstrating, this is just what happens with the Trans Mountain diversions in the Poudre. Here's the Grand River ditch, right? So it used to be called, before it was the Colorado, it was the Grand River, and that's why they call the Grand River Ditch that happens up there in the Cooter Pass and dumps into Long Draw Reservoir. Here's the Laramie Cooter Tunnel. This takes water from the Laramie River underground into and dumps into our Cooter River. Other Trans Mountain, and then there's one that's not on here, that's my favorite one, the specimen ditch. That'll be your homework to figure out where that one is. We have so many irrigation companies here. It's, probably a total of, I'm guessing, looking at this, I'm thinking it's gonna be around 150,000 acres of irrigated ground. Here's a slide that demonstrates these irrigated areas. Or if we go here, this is the south side of Licious. This is a slide that shows all the different crops we grow here, which is pretty amazing, right? Look at all that. And then this is talking about our water treatment plants on the Cooter, and that's the slide that shows those areas. And then Corey actually already went over this, so we won't go over this, but we have these plans happening in the Cooter as well. And the important things to remember about the water storage rights is that they are almost always junior to direct flow rights, which are irrigation water rights.
Sorry,
Want to take a few questions for David? David, what time do you get up in the morning?
I look at what the river's doing, like at 5, but with the new alert system that we have, it can tell me something's going wrong. It's really nice.
Not too bad. I've heard others that.
No, you never forget about the river. There's no getting up.
You're thinking about it in your sleep, like, what is happening? And then that makes you get up.
You're like looking at it in the morning, and you're like, well, that's either what I expected or I didn't. And so.
Do you have a website that you have all the information about the river and all that you collected from all these slides? Places we find all that?
We have a lot of information on our website. A lot of it came from there. David might have done different. We're happy to supplement the presentation and give you some info.
In that Google form?
Yeah, and it'll have our contact information. You can email us.
I had a question, this might be too big for this, but, when we had the water attorney speaking to us earlier about augmentation plans, she said that you've got to, replace the water in time, place and amount. I was wondering about quality, because with more ponds and more pipeline, one of the arguments that folks who don't want the Thornton pipelines take out at the, like, closer to headward waters, is it should go down the Cooter and then be diverted. But my guess is the water, after it's gone through a bunch of municipalities, is not as good of water as Thornton has rights to. Is there a legal guarantee that the water, that your senior rights tied to the quality of the water? Does that make sense?
It does. That's a very deep, complicated question. So the only time we typically deal with water rights, even if it's in a decree. So a lot of times in a water court decree, there are water quality issues between applicants, I'm moving my way farther from plan above your intake type thing. Those might be addressed in that water court case, as far as terms and conditions from the stipulation, generally litigated outside of that. A lot of times the terms and conditions of the decree is a result to deal with that, but it's not directly addressed in that. So the only time we really deal with water quality is on statutory authority to exchange. And it has a requirement that for us to approve an administrative exchange, so one that's not decreed, otherwise it was dealt with in the decree, is that the water is of basically equal water quality, to the senior as far as the replacement. And that gets really deep and complicated. What does that mean, right? If they historically used it for irrigation, it was historically not very good quality. Does it need to be pristine? No. So that's a great question, but But a lot, especially today, a lot of aquifer, a lot of change use cases deal with that, but not directly. You know, we're looking at water rights, time, place, and amount. But a lot of times you'll see the stipulations between different parties that are concerned about the water quality, those terms and conditions in that same degree. And sometimes might even lay out water quality parameters that are required. Hopefully that
No,
helps.
that's helpful. I just, I imagine closer to the headwaters, it hasn't picked up contaminants from going downriver. And so I can understand why a municipality would be like, we want to take it out, see it then later. Okay.
And it's been a really big question because the health department is promulgating new standards for discharge from lakes and reservoirs that impact water rights. So it's been a huge topic. But I think where Division of Water Resources land is we administer the decrees, typically not water quality.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you for having us again. Email us, you have our contact, we're always happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, we are coming up on our final speaker for the day. You don't have slides, right? No, okay. You may know, Jenny Arndt is the mayor of the city of Fort Collins. She has spent a lot of time in Fort Collins, maybe since she was 3 weeks old. Details. She has an undergrad degree in sociology at Colorado College, an MA in geography, and MA in special education from Purdue University in Indiana. And importantly, she was a Peace Corps volunteer. And she has done a few other things. She was a state representative in 2014, in 3+ terms in the General Assembly, and she was elected mayor for College.
So let's get again to Jenny Hart.
I'm very excited to have you.
Thanks.
Thank you for.
How long do we have?
We have until, we have 40 minutes.
Oh, okay, perfect. Okay. Thanks for having me. Mostly I'm not here as mayor, although I think the topic is leadership in water, so we can talk about that. What I'll do is just give you like 5 minutes of my experience in the water world, and then we'll just go to Q&A, because I think that's, these people are giving you a very lot of information in a very short amount of time. I was like, oh my God. And I looked at your other speakers today, and those are all just, you've had a great day with Dan and Jennifer.
The first
thing I'll say in the water world, if you want to make money, go to law school now. That's where all the money is, because we will continue to fight over water. And if I could do it over again, I would have gone to law school immediately. So having said that, Melanie's husband is a water lawyer, so, but he works at the municipal level, so I'm not sure he got the memo. A lot more money. Anyway, it's nice to see you guys. Leadership in water. Okay, so I was a special ed teacher and a professor. And anyway, I will skip the political story of why I came to run for office, but I did. And my predecessor was Randy Fisher, who was a water engineer at the Capitol. And we were on a bike ride one day, and he said, Jenny, when I'm done at the Capitol, there's not gonna be a lot of people who know very much about water. That was in 2013. And my special ed has kicked in. I like to go where I'm needed and kind of where nobody else wants to go, because I figure, well, if you're in public service, just do the job nobody else wants, because, I don't know. The gifted and talented kids are gonna be fine. I was worried about these kids. So, and it turned out nobody else could do that, so I'll do it. So I was like, oh, okay, what do I do? And then he wrote me a list of things to do, books to read, and I do also have a PhD in it. Have my MBA and a couple masters, so I'm a good student. I didn't need to actually have someone write a little syllabus for me and everything. I just wrote for myself, and then I just tucked in, and I went on every water tour I could find through Water Education Colorado, and I followed the water committee around all summer. They would stay at a hotel, and I'd sit at a little KOA in my tent, and get up, and I just became a student of water. That doesn't make me a water lawyer. That doesn't make me a water expert. Anyone you meet in the water world, that they tell you know everything, don't talk to them again. I mean, these guys are learning every day. Nobody who's a real player in the water world thinks they know every piece of cycle development, right? We all have a little piece, and we may be somewhat experienced in that piece, but there's always so much more to know. And then that's why I love the water community so much. Because once I demonstrated a real commitment to knowing and learning, they really scooped me up and were mentors to me, everyone. So then I attended law conferences. I just did a lot, read a lot of boring water law books by myself. And when I got to the Capitol, there's you serve on certain committees, and then there's sort of other committees as assigned by the speaker, and she put me on the water committee because she had seen what I'd been doing and everything. I served on the water committee for 7 years, and I was chair of it eventually. I was also chair of the ag committee, which was a good time with that. So it was a big change in my career, and I would never send a water expert. In fact, I hate speaking at like water conference. I don't hate it, but I always make sure that I stay in my lane. Because I'm talking to all these water experts, like you guys, I'm sure I know some of you guys work in the field too, and I'm like, I don't. But I do know something about water politics, and currently the governor has put me on the Water Quality Control Commission. So DWR is exactly right. They do quantity, we do quality. So the Colorado Water Conservation Board is the appointed board that does quantity, and we do quality. And check this out. For the first time ever in the history of both those boards, we had a joint meeting last year. I was like, wow. That was, wow, I don't know if we should do this. I mean, this is gonna be, I was like, oh my gosh. And then the time and detail to just have the whatever, 9 of, whatever there are, 18 of us, 14 of us sitting around the table. That's all scripted. And I was nervous. I was like, are you kidding me? No wonder we have problems, right? In the world. It's like, goodness gracious, we're just doing quantity and quality together. And we'll keep that up. So I do know something about what he alluded to, we're setting a lot of regulations, for, yeah, like you said, lakes, all everything. And then we have a whole roadmap. You can see it on the WQQC Water Quality Control Commission website. I won't give you all the details because that's not what I really want to talk about. It's very detailed and very science-based. And my role on that commission, I'm with a lot of science-based people, is to, again, to like think about policy, right? Is it feasible? Because I love scientists, and they will go for the very strictest regulation ever in the world, even if it's not feasible to enforce it or implement it. No, we can't do that. Well, I know that's what the science says. I know we're here to get the cleanest water possible. But if we make infeasible regulations, no one will follow them, and we will be ineffective in our job. So I'm like a fun sucker. But those are things I know to be true in the world. So we just had a discussion on feasibility English. Last time we met, how many of these regulations are infeasible? They're like, well, most all of them. Kill me. No, and that's how you lose trust in the public eye. So CDPHE comes in and, you know, sometimes the regulations are so strict and so tight that people can't meet them feasibly, especially the smaller water providers. How are you gonna get $3 million to redo the wastewater treatment plant? You know, so how are you gonna work on that? So anyway, that's a little bit about my background in water. As mayor, I deal with some things in water, but of course it's a different role. Try to see more of the overall big picture, like for Collins and regionally, really important regionally. And the other thing I would say about water policy that is obvious, but when you're working with public policy, issue like public power and water and some other things are very technical in nature. And there will be special interest groups who, for whatever they want, interest they have. Activists are great, special interests are great, they push things in a certain way. And there's some technical issues that we're working with by really informed professionals who weigh into people who go, like me and Melanie. And hopefully we're smart enough to listen to everyone because that's, I'll tell you, that's a challenge because some people really don't want to take the time to really learn how things work. And now we have this new thing, it's probably always existed, but it's coming to the forefront. These are one of my friends at the Capitol goes, Jenny, that's a slam pack. I'm like, what's a slam pack? And I'm like, Franklin Collins, like, don't we all just try to do the best we can? He's like, no, these are just fronts, basically. their nonprofit status, they raise money from people, through different messaging, and all the money goes to them, right? If you're a nonprofit, it's really not very traceable, right? And you're not accountable to anybody. So we're seeing that in the activist space more and more. That's frustrating, because these are highly technical issues where the policy deserves to have a critical eye, informed by experts to policymakers. So you can see where that frustration comes in. I mean, I hear one water person, who probably you know or have heard of the group. It's not a group, it's a person of one who says it's a group, but it's just one person. That the Poudre is the last free-flowing river in Colorado. This gentleman David said there's 65 reservoirs off the Poudre. I believe David. Right? So that's the headline, right? And that's how the $10, $20.
And that's how the $10, $20 person comes in.
And then that's
right?
when the lawsuits
And then
start.
that's when the lawsuits start.
And those are designed not to whip, but to slow things down, to add costs to me and you and the ratepayer. So that's my view of that. I don't like cynical people in policy space. If you're an activist, then you're really taking time to learn the issues and really have a point of view, absolutely all day long. What are we missing? What didn't we see? That's important. The other one, not so much. So that's sort of my opening. I hope it's not too like aggressive, but I usually just a very plain speaker, so I hope you ask me hard questions and things you're curious about. I know how much nature can be to see assessments, and I know a lot of those things, but if you're gonna ask me technical aspects of engineering or everything, I don't know, that's what the engineers are for. And you guys are engineers of it. Yeah.
Just real quick, after the point you just made, is there a way that we deal with the fact that often the loudest person in the room is the least educated on an issue or things that they know the most, when obviously, like you said, if someone says they know everything, don't ever talk to them.
Yeah, that was kind of a joke. But, yeah, well, it takes leadership. It just does. And they'll convince you that they command this many votes and you'll never get elected again. Once somebody says that to me, I just turn off, because I didn't get elected to get reelected, so I really don't care about that. I care more about doing the job in front of me. The irony is, if you operate that way, you might get reelected and keep having to do this, right? But, I think it just takes, I want to give a shout out to the Community Foundation, because what it takes is education. And what it takes is people like you guys and all of us coming together and learning. And that's a rare opportunity, right? We need more people leading this. Next week, I'm gonna speak to the Water Education Foundation that does this statewide, right? To that group, that's a great group that does it too, and leads lots of field trips and stuff. I highly recommend them. And then you just have to say no. I mean, you have to use your brain. Do I trust that person or that person? I think when you get elected, really, it's not what you know, it's like who you trust, right? Because we can't know everything about everything we do. I'm the chair of our municipal airport. Zero. But do I know to trust them, to ask them how to think my way through a logical problem in a process-oriented manner? Yeah. So then I rely on a lot of experts, and then you can listen to the people. I listen to everyone. And part of being a good leader is knowing what to build to. And then sometimes it just takes courage. No. I said no yesterday. Somebody was like, what? It was not to another entity. I just didn't think it's good for Fort Collins, and we've been working on this for like 3 years, and we've been trying hard, making compromises, and at the end of the day, they want us to sign a contract tomorrow, and they won't tell us what the price is. They said, we can't do the price until you sign the contract, and I said, no. And they're like, there's just no and after that. And it was a little bit of a uncomfortable silence. It wasn't like immediate, no, but it was like a 2.5 year process, and it's so no. I go, well, you could just walk down and tell the city manager right now to do this. I go, yeah, I know that, but I didn't say anything. I just like, yeah, I know that. I mean, I don't know. I said no. Sometimes it comes to that. When you are looking out after your constituents. The good of the group is always more complicated than the interests of a few. Yeah.
Curious what you think the biggest
challenges for the region as it relates to water? What would be the greatest opportunity?
The greatest opportunity is always collaboration, you know, the people say the story of water in Colorado is about all this conflict. Yeah, actually, it's not. It's actually a story of collaboration. Because look, it's working. No, I mean, the appropriation system has some problems that come along with it, but we've solved that through like in-stream flow. I think what he didn't mention was that's an actual right now. And the state of Colorado owns more water rights than any other entity in, right? And in our constitution, the water belongs to the people. That's why we call it a use refractory right. You're buying the right to use it, you don't own it. Okay, now I'm off topic, but, so I think it's a challenge, the opportunity is enhanced collaboration and regionalism. And there's a group through the foundation that's coming together to try to do that. The challenge is, the reality is we have enough water. The challenge is we have to change the way we live. And as long as everyone thinks they're gonna have 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms, a double car garage and a big backyard, that will still be available in some instances, but we will fundamentally, over time, the next 50 years, change. So I think I was just at a meeting yesterday with Northern Colorado regional leaders, and no one mentioned that. I said, hey, here's the elephant in the room, guys, like, we can do conservation, sure, we can do hydration, we can do Northern Waters leading a charge to keep water in Colorado, which I like. We can do all these things, and that's great. And which really comes to shove, eventually we're gonna have to rethink how we do some of our. But you've all been to Europe. I mean, one of my friends is Danish, and he went to CSU and got his PhD, and then he became head of the World Water through the World Bank, Mr. Number One. And I was like, hey, Torkel, like, what's up with Western water in the US? And he goes, oh God, Jen, you haven't even started the survey. You guys haven't, but yeah, I haven't even scratched the surface of what it means to. And I said, yeah, we have a lot of leeway, right? It tells me we have enough water. So the good news is we have a lot of room for that, right? And the bad news is gonna be, I don't think it's bad news, it's just real, right? Yeah. We can do it. I also think people are really smart. I also think they're very smart, but I also think that as humans, we don't move until we have to, right? Like it was like, you can't work from home, nobody can work over Zoom, you have to be in person. Well, pandemic, wow, everybody's at home, what happened, worked just fine. I have worked remotely for years. People are like, Tess, you can't develop relationships and get your work, and how do you know people are working? I'm like, by their work product, just like you do in the office. Like, how do you know people in the office are working? By their work, you know? So the pandemic is an example of how when humans are really pushed into a situation, we can pivot fast and get it right. But I'm an optimist. I don't know why I'm an optimist. It's the nature, I'm hanging in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else? Like hard question. Like, what's the best water fight you've been in? What's the best water fight you've been in? What? What's the best water fight? Let's see, what's the best water fight? Well, it took me 3 years to pass the Colorado Ag water right. Of course, the water right in Colorado for years. I still don't know if anybody used it, but I want to have it there in case we need to. And it basically means you can go to water court and have a change case. You have an ag right, an industrial, municipal. You can get that changed to a flex, right? So it's more flexible. I know we do a lot of water sharing and trading and renting now, but this is a fundamentally new right. That if you get the flex right, then you can do it without a bunch of complicated arrangements. That was a 3-year process. And that's really market based. And when I joined the Capitol, the Republicans had the Senate, the Democrats had the House. I'm a Democrat, and it was 34-31 in the House. So it just took, it was even. You really had to work with everybody, which I personally really liked. The Republicans didn't like it because of some short Democrat from Fort Collins running and it didn't smell good, right? The Democrats didn't like it because, why was it so market based? Why don't we just tell them what to do? You know, and I'm like, wait, there's something for everybody in here. And then, frankly, Ducks Unlimited saw it run and fail. And they're a very balanced conservation group that cares a lot about water. And they came in and really helped me. And then I got a public sponsor on it, and I was like, you guys, look, this is a very elegant, and I didn't think of this idea. Randy Fisher started it, and then Andy Jones was a big promoter of it, and I saw that you had someone from his law firm here. And pretty soon, after 3 years, people were like, oh, that actually is not a bad thing. Yeah, so that was a good one, and I learned a ton running that bill. People were laughing at me. But then they passed 3 years later, so it's good. Yeah.
So this is related, because I think one of your strengths as a legislator was being able to learn about sea level and anything in the water world. Needs to, because you know, like farmers and plants and different businesses. So what would you say are the strategies or skills that can help both you in having those hard conversations and bringing people together?
Yeah, I think once you sort of demonstrate that you're an honest broker, right, that you really do care about going, it really helped when I was on the ag committee freshman year, and I went to every single person in the ag committees, their farm or ranch. And I said, well, you want to visit? I go, well, I don't know. I don't, I mean, I live at Safe Park. You know, and CSU, obviously is a ag school, but I said, I need to know what you're seeing that I'm missing. And so even if we're not gonna vote the same way, I need to feel like I try to understand where your vote's coming from. And once you do that, you're like, oh, there's so many ways we understand and know each other. We might have different ways of getting there, right? That was great. And then, the river district, you know, Colorado River District, their board, well, opposed every single bill I did, just like you jerk, right? They'd take a vote and they'd come and they'd say no. And I was like, well, who? So I told the lobbyist, I'm like, who is this little board of yours? And he's, well, it's my board. I go, well, who's that? And he goes, well, why don't you come over and present to the board? Oh my gosh, you should have seen their face drop. And I'm sitting there late to talk to them. I drive over to Glenwood Springs and they're like, who's that? And I'm like, oh, I'm Jenny. I never mind that. All the bills you post, that's me. And they would start laughing, and why are you here? I go, well, why wouldn't I be here? Why would I not come here to try to understand why you take the positions you do? And honestly, that just helps so much. And I said, what I don't understand is if I run a water conservation bill that says, you know, HOAs can't prevent you from saving water, which actually used to be against the law. I didn't say you have to save water, I just said HOAs can't prevent you from doing it. Why do you oppose that? Well, we just don't like liberals, Democrats. Okay, that's a solid reason. I said, you know, every ounce we save on the eastern slope is ups the chance that we won't come for another Trans Mountain Bridge. Do you get that? Because all the people, and frankly, most of the money is in the Front Range. If we stand up and conserve more, you get to keep more. Because right now we pull 500,000 acre field from you. And they're like, and so now, not then, but I think that was the beginning. They will get some conservation bills. They go, yeah, we want you Front Range people, right? So when you're like just logical and not antagonistic and really honestly try to understand, hey, 99% of people are that way. They just relaxed. They thought I was antagonistic toward them. When I showed I wasn't, I just didn't understand. I'm like, oh. And then all of a sudden, Don Forum, West Globe Republican, and we just ran 1 million bills together. And once we agreed, they just passed because people are like, oh, Jenny and I are good. You know. So just like that. Just like you would in your family. I don't know. Treat people nicely, try to be a good broker. And then also be willing to kill ideas that aren't good. Like if you propose an idea and it's not good, and you're hearing from people it's not good, but yeah, I'm wrong. That's not good. I'm not doing it. I did that several times. People are like, oh. Stuff like that. Kind of common sense stuff. Which also makes some people Special interest lunch. Anyway, any other questions? Yeah,
Have you ever had the opposite scenario where maybe you had an initial thought or opinion on something and someone was able to put it there? Based on in years, maybe your mind has changed or you were more informed about what they were thinking.
every single day. I mean, I can't think of one thing that I proposed that came out exactly the way I thought, like. I always say I think it's true, because I am an external processor, but like, I don't know what I think until we've talked. How could I think of, it's just stupid to think that one person or one group could think of something that was good for the whole state without taking input from the state, right? I mean, it takes everyone. Yeah, all the time, constantly. As mayor too, it's like, oh, I thought this, but of course, then you have to, that's my perspective, but I just have one perspective. And you're making rules for everyone. And the legislature for the state and the mayor's the city, so how could it possibly be a world according to Jenny? That would be weird. I wouldn't even want to live in that world. I'd be like, oh, what did I do? Yeah.
You've been part of the regional leaders group that's been getting together for several years. It's Greeley, Windsor, Loveland, and Fort Collins.
Correct.
And it's traditionally mayors and city managers come and meet us here together to discuss what are some tangible outcomes when it comes to water that you've seen that have been solid and beneficial over the last few years.
Well, mostly the subgroup for the, that Sean Chambers is leading out, really, that's supported by the foundation. And then it's always about relationships, right? Always. I mean, Mayor Gates and I are very close, got some over there. And then there's new mayor in Windsor, Julie, and then the mayor of Loveland.
And then the mayor of
We serve on PRK together.
We serve on PRK together and airport
So
together.
those are just
So
times
those
we
are
sit
just times
very
we sit very frankly,
you know, talk about regional issues. And it's great to
It's
have
great
a
to have a
convener
convener for that.
Specifically water, I think we were just
probably
probably this idea
this
that
idea
Northern
that
has
Northern
is like,
has, is how do we
keep
keep
the water in northern Colorado is probably coming.
Is that the group that Sean Chambers is working with, or? I remember conversations like last year talking about addressing the buy and dry things that were happening with that regional leaders group, but I don't know the detail.
Yeah, he came and just presented to us and updated us on it. I
I
was
wasn't
initially on that subgroup, but then it was awkward because I'm elected and then other elected say, well, she's on, I want, and it gets kind of cattywampus if like you have to be aware of that you have a different role as elected. So Sean kicked me off. He called me, he's like, oh, Mayor, this is gonna be an awkward phone call. I go, you're fine, you pick me up right now. He goes, oh, you made that so easy. But, you know, I can see it, right? That's not right. Like I have, when I accepted the role as mayor, I have to accept that I can't work on a technical working group. Because that's responsible. But I kicked off, so I don't know what they're doing. No, I'm just kidding. I talked to Sean a lot. But they did come and give us an update. And Brendan came too. Yeah.
How do you approach balancing in your role of mayor, the needs of Fort Collins and the needs of regional partners in terms of water?
Yeah. Well, Fort Collins is my jam. But I think what's good for the region is also good for Fort Collins and vice versa. Right? I mean, it's like having a railroad go through your property. You know, we don't own the river, but we certainly, it's our responsibility to be good stewards of it through, right? But that connects us to all the other municipalities, farms, ranches downstream and upstream, and on the west slope too. So, kind of, I think, understanding how things work and getting a bigger picture. Because if we start on us versus them, we formally took a resolution to drop our formal opposition to this, which had been in place for years. And the big catalyst for that was the 404 amendment, right?
they have all their grants, right? You continue to fight against something that is. The last, did you guys talk about Three Forks at all?
Not yet.
Okay, the last dam that got shut down in the state of Colorado was called Three Forks, and it got shut down because the 404 was denied by the EPA. Okay, so we're like, well, keep fighting this because I'm like, they got their 404. The EPA signed off, like, never has a dam been stopped after that. I honestly think it's a little bit of old thinking. I always told Republicans they need to say climate change and Democrats need to say storage because that's true. When things get hotter and it melts sooner, we're gonna have to retime the water and that's called storage. Now, we could also work on aquifer storage recovery, which I did a lot of bills about that. We can think of non-consumptive ways to do it. Which I think is a good response to storage that suits the environment and maintains the water. So there's all those other things in there. But I think it'd be a really very Victor attitude or Paul just draws our 50 square miles around ourselves, says, no, this is our portion, nothing, nothing. Yeah. I texted Brad Wynn that. I texted Brad Wynn that night. I said 70, just or 661, whatever. And he was like, what? I was like, a piece of cake. That's what I texted. But it's always better to work together than influence each other. For the good of everyone. Right? We're not a participant in this. You know, we're gonna try to do our own damn. But is that really the best, most environmental answer? To have two dams or which have one? Boy, the city of Portland likes this. That's our dam, we're doing our dam. Which is a funny thing about human nature, right? You get latched onto your project. Port Palms feels like the White Hats environmentalists, but they want to tear down and build up a whole new dam for 8,000 acre feet. That's a boat. That's not much. That's $300 million for 8,000 acre feet. They're pretty tied to that dam. Really gave up Siemens for the aquifer storage project, which Port Palms passed on. So, you know, there's always. What? What'd you say? Say? Yeah, oh yeah. It might have been a good thing, but there's just always more to the story, right? You just keep thinking and talking about it. Yeah. That's just too easy. Nothing. Well, I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Jenny. We very much appreciate your time.
Oh, well, enjoy and taking time out of your busy day.
Okay, we're gonna just wrap up by, let me just stop this. So we're gonna wrap up with a little bit of group discussion. So we're gonna go back to our same groups that we had at the start. And we have our reflection questions. So just spend a little time talking in your group about those, and one person should submit with notes, and then we'll. Yeah. Thanks, Jenny. Right, everybody clear on what we're doing? So getting your groups.
We're gonna type them up and send them later. I don't think any of us have.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm probably taking them.
Okay.
You know, we have.
Like, so you need.
No, you're not. People give us that. And we're gonna be sent in. There's a lot of.